Hello, I'm Bones, and I'm excited to answer a question I was asked on a video. I think it was kind of like a jokey comment, but I took it seriously because I really like it and I think it's a good discussion. And the question is, how do you deal with the realization that something you've worked on for months is just consumed within minutes? And that's from B's 716. And I thought that was a great question because it is the opposite of something that I say. So I often say that you don't need to worry about making things perfect because people go through comics very fast, they don't pay a lot of attention to every panel, and that you shouldn't have to worry about making things perfect. It's an anti-perfectionism phrase of mine. But the flip side to that is, what if you do put in a lot of effort on your pages? Even if you don't put in tons of effort, it still takes way more time to create a page than it will for your reader to read a page. And that can be very discouraging. You can kind of feel lonely in your passion for your comic when you feel like your readers don't engage with it as much as you do. I think that's a really good point to consider. And especially in today's age where there's just so much slop put out there, there's so much AI garbage, there's so many comics that are produced under these intense deadlines, and it feels like everyone is faster at making comics than you, and why even try? Why even try when my fastest still isn't good enough? And I would like to dispel that, because the antidote to this question is that comics matter to you, okay? You don't make comics because you've never read a comic before, probably. You read something that mattered to you, that resonated with you for a long-ass time. There is a comic from your childhood that you read once, and it has forever shaped your life. If you go back far enough, there is probably some piece of media that mattered to you a lot, and was the reason that you started creating in the first place. We don't create art because it doesn't mean something, right? We create art because it's meaningful, because we want to have an impact on people. And the fear that people aren't going to engage your work is an understandable fear. Because if you can't get people to appreciate the effort you put in, then what's the point? And the point is that someone is going to resonate with your art. There's so many people out there in this world that if you're making something for you, there's someone else like you who needs to see your art and will be changed by seeing it. Or at the very least, they'll hold it dear. I think about this a lot in terms of video games. I'm a gamer, I'm sorry. But there's often this push to move away from single player games with a set end time. Everyone's always staring at how many hours can I get out of this game, looking at multiplayer experiences and whatever. They can go for thousands of hours, or open-ended games can go for thousands and thousands of hours. But we don't appreciate that single player games with a set runtime can get the same amount of time and love and effort out of them. Probably not the same amount of money. That's where the real heart of it comes from, why we move away from those kind of games. But I've played way more hours of Undertale than what exists within Undertale. And the same with Wind Waker. I have engaged fully within those worlds, and I love them and I appreciate them deeply. And the same is true with comics, just because it will technically take a reader 30 minutes to go through 30 years of your life doesn't mean you can't affect them for 30 years of their life. I still think about Cucumber Quest. I still bring up Cucumber Quest. I love Cucumber Quest. It is such a good comic, and it was so obviously an inspiration for me. And that's outside of the fact that comics don't need to matter to other people to be special to you. You can still love your comic, and you should still love your comic if no one sees it. I don't think there's any shame in wanting people to see it and being frustrated when people aren't reading it, but you need to appreciate your work. Like, these pieces take so much time. They like inevitably become like time capsules of your life. And like, I adore that part of comics, even for the cringy aspects and the things that like I wouldn't have necessarily written nowadays. Seeing that growth on the page is important. And your art is important. And I want to impress this upon you. Again, this world that very much degrades the idea of art. And like, you need to hold strong, be steadfast, and don't let people put your art down. Like, it matters. I think for me, the biggest wake up to this is my comic Pretty Mouth. If you know me, you know Pretty Mouth, okay? Pretty Mouth was the second comic that I made, and I do not like it. I detest this comic. I've come around on it, especially the more I think about it. It comes in waves. I don't think it's executed well at all. I don't love most of the artwork. There's so many like awkward art phases going on through it, and my writing is bad and doesn't explain anything, and everything's so open-ended. But people love Pretty Mouth, okay? There are a lot of friends that I have made were initially fans of Pretty Mouth. Like, I know people who cite Pretty Mouth as their reason for making comics in the first place, and that is insane, okay? That is crazy. So like, even my worst work, the work that just I do not like, still mattered to people. We as artists don't really get to decide what is going to matter to people. So like, put your work in as much as you want. Like, don't get in your own way about things. That's why I say, you know, don't rush a page that's going to be viewed for a few seconds. But with that, when people love your work, those pages that they look at for a few seconds may still remain within the piece, but there are pages that people go back to, and those are like your centerpiece pages that you spent all that time working on. You know, like, take some time to appreciate the comics that you love, like your inspirations. Really dig into them and think about work that you read. Like, consume media more actively and like, be the person you want reading your comics. You know, like, it's a lot harder to like appreciate works and understand like their nuances when you're just consuming things as content, you know? Like, you're not gonna find your favorite if you're always checked out when you're reading. Like, read more actively. I don't know why I'm getting into like how you should read comics or whatever, but like, it's something that matters to me, you know? People talk about like AI art who don't understand art, and they don't understand like the intentionality of things, right? Like, they don't understand that the hours that it took to make something are part of it, you know? Like, the mistakes made are part of it. They're not just like when you're an artist who can't fully achieve what's in your head, or maybe like you do achieve what's in your head and you intentionally make things like the way that they are. Like, that's special. That means something. It's not the same as like an AI not being able to perfectly articulate like a hand, you know? Like, your comic where you're constantly hiding the hands because you don't want to draw them. Like, that's so much more interesting. It's such a, like I was saying before, it's like a time capsule of like your learning experience, and I think that's so cool. That's like such a webcomic thing. And I don't know, I just love comics is basically what this comment, like what this question struck within me. I just felt it deep in my soul. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think in a weird way, with like all this AI art stuff, people stare at images like a lot more, and they try to like piece together whether it's real or fake, and like they think a little bit more about like the intentions, obviously. And like, I don't think it's for the better that people are doing this, but like I wish people would look at art with a little more intentionality rather than just trying to like dissect if it's fake. I think the weird thing about AI, I don't know why this is a video about AI, but like I think the weird thing is that you get embarrassed. It makes people more embarrassed to have opinions about something, especially things that are like abstract, because like it's the amplification of like not being able to understand a media, so you don't want to talk about it, which is totally a thing, with like this additional layer of like, what if I comment something heartfelt about this and it turns out to be entirely fake and made by a machine and it's just like a gotcha, right? This isn't like entirely new either, right? Because like there's always been people who are like, oh, that's actually something my child drew, and then they like cross their arms like ha ha ha. Like that's always kind of existed within art, and you kind of just gotta laugh it off and just like don't care about the opinions of people who want to disrespect art so boldly. Art is just so freaking cool. Read webcomics. Webcomics are just great. Read them. Like, read some of like the non-popular comics. Like, you're gonna find your favorite. Be the audience member you want to have, is basically what I'm saying in this weird ramble that's gone off course. That's all. Thank you so much for listening to me talk. If you were working on comics today, tell me about it. If you give me a comment, that's great engagement for me, and it helps you stay accountable and helps you keep making your comic, which we all want to see. Okay. Otherwise, also leave questions. I love answering questions. I have a great time doing it. This is like we've done a whole week of this. We're into our second week of daily videos, and I am still going strong. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.